Liz and Wes just kind of keep working together so that way Michael will fall in love with Liz. I bet you can imagine how that goes. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel, Lady Literacy, where I share all of my thoughts about the books that I've been reading and yada yada yada. First of all, I just want to say shout out to this amazing shirt. It is a shirt representing Delacroix Academy, which is the academy from my favorite book, If We Were Villains, by somebody. I can't remember the author's last name because it's the only book they've written. But I'll hyperlink the Etsy store where I bought this shirt from in case any of you want it because it's amazing. And I just loved If We Were Villains. In this video, I wanted to share the books that I read within the first week of January. It's been a really good start to the year, I must say. I have never set a reading goal this high for myself. Usually I always set it at 52 books so that I can read one book a week. And then I'm like, hopefully that's good. But I don't know, there's been a couple years where I've read a lot more than 52. Like this year I read 72 and the year before that I read like 90. So I really think it's possible. I'm not teaching this year. I am doing a lot of traveling though. And with my new job, I don't work every day. So I have like a lot more free time than I ever did before. So I have plenty of time to read. And so with that being said, as soon as the new year started, I was like, let's read, like let's get a head start because I always go through a phase during the year where I like don't want to read anything at all. So I'm like, if I can start the year strong, it might help to like account for the weeks or like the maybe months where I don't want to read anything. And so with that being said, one of my best friends, I'm always recommending her books to read. And she was like, well, have you read this? Have you read this? And I was like, no, I guess I better read books that you want me to read because you're always reading the books that I want you to read. So it's only fair. So I actually started the year off, literally, this was like at 12:30 in the morning on New Year's Day. I'm driving home from hanging out with my friends on New Year's Eve. And I was like, let's just start this bitch, you know, like let's start the book that she wants me to read. So I started Swear to Howdy. And I have been listening to pretty much all of these books or reading them on my Kindle. And so I don't have a physical book to show you. All right, so Swear to Howdy is by Wendelin Van Draanen. I don't know how to say this person's last name. It probably only takes about 5 hours to read. When I was reading it, I could not stop thinking about Rhett and Link from Good Mythical Morning. They're my favorite YouTube channel. If you haven't watched them, check them out because they're hilarious and they're just kind of like, that's the YouTube channel I go to when I'm sad. But the main characters in this book remind me so much of Rhett and Link, like just their childhood and everything I know about what they experienced growing up. And they had a book that had come out a while ago called The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek. The characters in that book are really similar to Rhett and Link, but they also kind of remind me of the main characters in the story. Basically, the concept of the story is that this kid named, what's his name, Russell? He moves to this town and he meets his neighbor, Joey. And Joey is this like super like out there kind of kid. Like he's super goofy. He has like no filter at all. And he's really just hyper and wild and immediately like warms up to the main character who again, I think his name is Russell, but he calls him Rusty. He's like, you can't go by that name. We're going to call you Rusty. So Rusty and Joey become friends and really you just experience like chapter by chapter them being goofy and growing up together and getting into all kinds of trouble. At the very beginning of the book, the two boys are down by a river. They live in like some kind of rural area, like near a river or near the woods. And there's these fish. I don't remember what they called them, but basically Joey was saying, you know, you can catch a fish by sticking your thumb in the water and they'll just hook right on. They're so stupid. And so that's kind of like, we know that about these fish. And then Joey is trying to show Rusty how to fart on command. And he's like, look, I can fart on command. And then he goes into the water and he's like gonna try to fart to see a bunch of bubbles come up when all of a sudden one of those fish bites onto his little weenie. And it's hilarious. Like he starts freaking out. Honestly, it's just like, you will laugh a lot in this book. It's hilarious. And it's just kind of like all the like little mischievous trouble that young boys get into when they're really at that age of like kind of transitioning out of childhood into being like a teenager. So super funny. But throughout the book, it actually like gets pretty heavy. We learn that Joey's dad is abusive and not very emotionally intelligent. And it seems like Joey definitely has like a rough upbringing. And then something very dark happens near the end of the book, like maybe 3/4 of the way through, that's just really tragic. And then you get to see how they handle this traumatic experience. It's a really moving story. It's sad, but it is one of those books that will make you laugh and it will make you cry. I was at the gym finishing this book actually, like working out at the gym, doing my exercises, and I'm new to the gym. I just kind of started going back to the gym a little over a week ago. So I was at the gym and I'm like crying. I mean, I literally was crying because of what was going on in the book. And I'm like, these people probably think like, what the hell? This girl like can't even get through a workout without crying. Like I probably looked like I was crying because it was so hard. But the reality was that the book was just really moving and touching. So it's a super short read. It is a middle grade book, but I would suggest anyone to read it because I think you'll just feel really moved by it, and it's such a short read. It doesn't take that long. Ultimately, I gave the book 5 stars. The next book I read is also by the same author, and it's called Flipped. This was another middle grade read, and again, it's just the other book that my friend recommended to me. I was a teacher, she's still a teacher, and so we've definitely made a habit of reading middle grade fiction, and so Flipped was just another one of those middle grade books that she says was really good, and then I just had to read it. Now, I will say there is a movie adaptation of the book, but I don't recommend it, so just skip that, honestly. The story is between Julie Baker and Bryce Lasky. Bryce Lasky and Julie Baker live next door to each other, and the story starts out with Bryce moving into the house across the street. And this little girl, Julie, who's his same age, comes over and she's like, let me help you move. Like, let's play, let's hang out. Oh my gosh, we're friends. And he's like, who the frick is this girl? Like, back up. And she's clearly like kind of has a crush on him already. And it seems like she's been lonely and just wants a friend to hang out with. And Bryce is like, I don't know you like that, so leave me alone. And what's really fun about the book is that after it'll tell one part of the story from Bryce's perspective, it'll then tell the story from Julie's perspective. So you can like kind of get into both of their heads and see how they interpreted the scenario totally differently, which is super funny and charming. But we follow those two characters as they grow up and they get to middle school, and then most of the story really just kind of takes place at their middle school. But it's definitely one of those stories of unrequited love where Julie just totally has a crush on Bryce and he doesn't return those feelings. But it's just a really super sweet story, and yeah, I don't know, I'd recommend it. It was really cute. I think I gave it 4 stars because I didn't like the ending. Next, I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect going in, and I don't really even know how I started this book other than I was just like, I just want a quick romance, like give me something cute, give me something sweet. I don't know, somebody must have posted it on Goodreads or somebody posted it in maybe one of the Facebook groups I'm in, but I was like, sure, I'll read that. And I wasn't sure if I would like it going in because I had seen one of my other friends on Goodreads give it like a lower rating. And I actually started listening to it while I was exercising, and at first I was like, well, I don't really know if I care what's going on, but actually I very quickly got invested into the story, which just tells you how good of a book I think it is. The main characters in the story are Liz and Wes, and just like in Flipped, these two are neighbors and they don't get along. They've been neighbors since they were kids. We don't really get a lot about their childhood. It kind of just starts off when they're in high school. The book starts out with the main character, Liz, complaining that Wes always steals the parking spot. I still couldn't really map it out, like the setting of their neighborhood in my head based on the description, but it might have been because I wasn't paying that close of attention. But basically there's not a lot of places for them to park, and they each kind of want to use the same parking spot and they fight over it all the time. So Liz really doesn't like Wes, and Wes seems like he couldn't care less about Liz other than I just kind of want to screw you over and take your parking spot. So the beginning of the book, we know that they don't get along, and shortly after, the main character is in the hallway, and this other guy, Michael, who also used to live in that neighborhood, who had moved away to live in Texas or something for a few years, has come back, and he's got this southern drawl now, and he's so charming. And she's like, oh my God, oh dear Lord, sweet Jesus, I like this guy. And so she's like, oh my God, Michael's back. Liz finds out that Wes is invited to a party and invited Michael to that party. And Michael is this guy that she's been in love with since she was a child. And so she's like, well, maybe I can get Wes to help me get on Michael's good side. And that's really how this story kind of progresses. Liz goes over to Wes's house and she's like, look, I'll let you have the parking spot for a week if you let me go to this party with you and like talk me up to Michael. Then they kind of start working together, and the story continues that way, where like Liz and Wes just kind of keep working together so that way Michael will fall in love with Liz. I bet you can imagine how that goes. It's just really cute. I don't know, I liked it. And I think one of the things I loved about this book, other than the characters themselves, was the fact that Liz wants to be, I can't remember the title of the job, but she wants to be the kind of person who creates the soundtrack for movies when she's out of high school. Like that's her long-term career goal. And so anytime something happens in the book, she says, I can hear this song playing in my head, or if I had to pick a song to match this moment, it would be this one. And it was just really cool because a lot of the songs, actually pretty much all of the songs, I really didn't know. And so then if I was curious enough, I would go onto my phone, pull up the song, and then I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, that totally does match what's going on in the scene. Or it made it feel more immersive to me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. If this was a show or if this was a movie, that would definitely be a song that they would want to put on in the background. It's just a really cute, like enemies to lovers love story, and I don't know, it just had me in all the feels, and I just didn't want it to end. I gave this one 5 stars. Really, really liked it. After that, I read The Little Tea Shop in Tokyo, and this was actually the first book that I read for my 52 books in 52 weeks around the year challenge that I do through Goodreads. And it's just a really good way to challenge myself to read out of my comfort zone or read books that I've maybe never heard of before or wasn't really interested in before. Usually it's like around summertime, the Goodreads group will start submitting ideas for what these challenges or like reading category / topics should be for the following year. And everyone who's a part of the group gets to vote on these topics. So there are 52 topics, and then you would have to, once the new year starts, read books that meet each of those topics. And so the first topic of 2023 was to read a book. It has to take place, like the setting has to be in a country that starts with A, T, or Y, or a place that starts with A, T, or Y. ATY stands for Around the Year, which is the name of the Goodreads group. This is kind of one that's always picked, I think. I've had it every single year, and it's not my favorite. The only like place I was really interested in reading about was Tokyo, and so I kind of came across this book called The Little Tea Shop in Tokyo. This is by Julie Kaplan. All right, I'm gonna be totally transparent and say that I gave this book a 3-star rating. It was literally just okay. It is a romance story or a romance novel, or like one of those like kind of contemporary like chick flick romance books. The story follows the main character, Fiona, who is an aspiring photographer, and she's like somehow gotten this opportunity to go to Tokyo and work with one of the best photographers in the world to learn how to improve her practice and then ultimately put on an exhibition with the photos that she took in Tokyo. But as soon as she gets to Tokyo, she realizes that the guy that she was supposed to be working with isn't there, and that instead some guy named Gabe is picking her up, and she just so happens to know this person because he used to be her teacher, and she had a negative experience after something happened with that teacher, which I won't say because it would be a spoiler. The teacher, though, doesn't recognize her, and so they kind of start working together, and he's kind of an ass, and she's like, you know what, like, why are you even here? You're not giving me advice, you're not keeping me company, you're not like helping me or encouraging me. Like, he basically just takes her to different places in Tokyo and then picks her up later, and she's like, how am I supposed to improve in my photography when like I don't have anyone to basically coach me? And this guy is also a very, very famous photographer, so he's definitely qualified to do what she needs him to. He's just lazy. It's not really an enemies to lovers necessarily, but it kind of gives off those vibes, and it is like a little romance novel, but I just felt like I couldn't get into it, and I felt like there wasn't enough character development maybe in it. Or maybe I just like didn't care about the characters as much, but ultimately I gave it 3 stars. And the last book that I was able to read, aside from the 2 that I'm working on now, which I might finish after today, but I won't have time to share about in this video because I'm not done with them yet, and I want to post this video today, is called My Favorite Half Night Stand by Christina Lauren. Fun fact, Christina Lauren is not one author, it's actually two friends that write books together. So one's named Christina and one's named Lauren. I've read quite a few Christina Lauren books. I read The Unhoneymooners, I've read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, I've read Love in Other Words, Roomies, and then I read My Favorite Half Night Stand. And this one has lower ratings than some of the others that I've read. So I was kind of already thinking maybe I wouldn't like it as much. But unfortunately, I gave this book 2 stars, and it's probably my least favorite of all of her books. Kind of right down there with Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. And Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating was the first Christina Lauren book I read, and I didn't really like that one very much either, so I'm not sure how I ended up reading another one other than the fact that I think it was my friend Erin had suggested reading The Unhoneymooners, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, and I actually liked that one. So I've kind of learned that I will like some of the Christina Lauren books I read, and I won't like some of the others, which I guess is true with most authors. I don't know if I just didn't like the setting of this book or if I didn't like the characters. They're all university teachers. The main character, Millie, is really interested in criminology. And then the main love interest of the book, Reed, is like a scientist who works with like optics or something. But I felt like the characters were just super surface level, like wasn't really invested in them. And it kind of gave me similar vibes to The Kiss Quotient. And I just didn't like that book. Like, I know a lot of people liked The Kiss Quotient, so I guess if you like The Kiss Quotient, maybe you'll end up liking My Favorite Half Night Stand more than I did. But I didn't like The Kiss Quotient, and I didn't like My Favorite Half Night Stand. The concept behind the book is that these 4 friends, Millie, Reed, well, actually it's 5, and then their 3 best guy friends are all, they all have to go to this like fancy dinner or something. They're like, well, we should all take dates, but none of them are dating anyone. So they're like, oh, well, let's all join dating apps, and then we can maybe meet someone to take to this dinner. So they all make dating apps, and they kind of give Millie a hard time about her dating profile not being very good. She makes a new dating profile, but she kind of wants to keep it private, and she doesn't really, I don't know, she wants to be a little bit more reserved on this like second profile. So she keeps her other profile active, but she makes a new profile and she puts it under the name Catherine, which is her middle name, and uses a picture of herself that makes it not very easy to identify who she is. It's like a profile picture where you can't really even like see from here on. She doesn't share the profile with the guys or tell them anything about it. And she just kind of so happens to match with Reed, who is like her best friend and also the main love interest in the story. And she basically catfishes him. And obviously we can imagine that that wouldn't turn out very well. I mean, yes, does she go through like a little bit of personal transformation in the book? Sure. But I don't know, I just felt like I just really didn't care. I just didn't feel like the writing was very good, and I wasn't invested in the characters. So let me know what you thought of that if you've read that book, because I just didn't like it. That brings me to what I'm currently reading. It's really possible that I could finish both of these books today, honestly, or at least one of them, but not in time to make this video, so I'll have to talk about these books in the next video. But currently, I'm listening to Only When It's Us by Chloe Leese. It's a Bergman Brothers book. And this is one that I'm reading for the Around the Year challenge. Only When It's Us meets prompt number 3 on that list. I think prompt number 3, or it could be number 4, but it's a prompt that said, read a book that has one of the 5 main W, like the who, what, where, when, why words in the title. So Only When It's Us meets that criteria. And I feel like I'm just like in the mood to like pump through a bunch of like lighthearted romance novels after reading so much fantasy this last year. And I think it's cute so far. I really like didn't want to read it, to be totally honest. The main love interest has like a beard and he looks like a lumberjack, and that's just not my, vibe. And it's like a soccer player, and I'm like, I like theater and I like singing, like I don't really care about sports, but it's kind of cute so far. Yeah, I'm actually liking it more than I thought. And then the other book I'm reading is 1,000 Heartbeats by Kiera Cass. And she's the author of the Selection series. I didn't like these 2 as much, but I did actually really like the Selection series. So I was hoping that I would like this book, but I'm telling you right now, it got off to like such a boring start, and I felt like the writing was so poorly done. Like I was reading it and I'm like, yeah, this kind of seems like my level of writing. And like, I am interested in writing a book and I'm trying to write a book, but I also know that like I have some things I can work on with my writing. But I'm reading, like, I'm trying to write like a young adult realistic fiction book. This 1,000 Heartbeats book is fantasy, and I feel like when you're writing fantasy, like, your writing just has to be better. So I don't know, I was like, why is it so short? Like, every single chapter was turning around, and I'm like, so we just don't care about anything then? Like, are we not, anything that the main guy mentions, like, everybody in the group is like, sure, we'll do that, we'll risk our life. Not a big deal. And what? Like, I don't know, I just feel like it's very unbelievable and really poorly written. But the story is finally just kind of getting to a point where I'm like, okay, like, now I actually do want to know what's going to happen next. So it's getting better. I think if I stopped, I would have given it like 1 or 2 stars. Now it could be making its way to a 3-star. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know in the next video. But that is what I'm reading right now. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you're reading, or let me know if you've read any books in the beginning of the year. I have another video coming out a little bit later, maybe next week, about how to read more in 2023 if you're one of those people who has a really hard time getting through books, but you like want to be a reader. I've got some tips for you. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, let me know what you're reading, like and subscribe. Let me know if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.